Hello and welcome back to Passing the Torch, an online Bible study with your host and teacher, Bob Clark. Of course, that's me. And today is part or episode or lesson, whatever you want to call it, 16 of a series of shorter lessons that we've been calling Bible Bites that make you go, Today's lesson is, we've titled, Yesterday's Victory, Provision for Tomorrow's Battle. So let's set this up first, all right? The setup. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting at verse 4, and we'll wind up probably skipping some verses as we go through here. And a champion, you've probably heard this story before, but have you read it? So we'll read some of this. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath. Aha, we're talking about David and Goliath, right? All right. A champion named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. So let's try something on the order of 9 feet 4 inches. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. His coat of mail was 125 pounds. This is a big dude to be able to carry all of this. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, so a big beam on this thing. And his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels. His spearhead weighed 15 pounds. All right, big dude. Let's skip over a little bit. And the Philistine said, that is Goliath said, and he's shouting this out to the armies of Israel, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. I bet they were. Skipping over a little bit to verse 22. And David, I'm going to skip some through here as well just to shorten it. And David ran to the army and came and greeted his brothers, because his dad had sent him there to bring them some food. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines. And he spoke according to the same words, that is, he said the same thing he did before. So David heard them, he heard the words of Goliath. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? Sounds nice, right? But now Eliab, his oldest brother, when he spoke to the men, when David spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, Why did you come down here? I know your pride and your insolence of heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, What have I done now? We can see this family fight going on, right? And then David says, Is there not a cause? Is there not a cause for me to be here? Is there not a cause for people to stand up against Goliath, is really what he's saying. All right, now then, we go further, still in this story, but David's going to tell us the day before yesterday's victory. Okay, we're talking about yesterday's victory. He's going to tell us the day before yesterday's victory. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting at verse 32. Then David said to Saul, so they've brought David before King Saul, right? David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him, that is, because of Goliath. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, here's the day before yesterday's victory. David said to Saul, Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. He convinced him, okay? That was the day before yesterday's victory. So now we get to yesterday's victory. And you can imagine if there's day before yesterday's victory and yesterday's victory, there's got to be a today's victory in this lesson, right? All right. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting at verse 49. Then David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his, Goliath's, sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. All right, so we always have known the part about David defeating Goliath with a sling and a stone, but we also see that he took Goliath's own sword and he cut off Goliath's head. Going on to verse 54. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem. And he put his, Goliath's, armor in his tent. That's interesting. So it wasn't just that he killed him. He picked up his head and brought the head and all of Goliath's armor. He brought it to Jerusalem, including his sword. So David prevailed in yesterday's battle, making way for future victories. Provision for today's battle. When David was running from King Saul later on, he went to the high priest. So he was, running, huffing and puffing and everything, trying to get away from Saul. And he goes to the high priest and asked if there were any weapons there. In 1 Samuel chapter 21, so a few, 4 chapters later, starting at verse 1, and we're going to skip some verses. Now David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech, say that one 3 times fast, was afraid when he met David and said to him, why are you alone and no one is with you? And skipping over, David said to Ahimelech, is there not here on hand a spear or a sword? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. David's sort of lying a little bit, saying that he's on the king's business instead of running away from the king. So the priest said, the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, there it is, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take that, take it, for there is no other except that one here. And David said, there is none like it. Give it to me. So what we see here, David's previous victory became the weapon to fight his current battle. That's a cool thing. So some things to ponder from this. Who made David king? So we know that Samuel may have anointed David as the new king, right? While Saul was still alive. But it was really Goliath who made David king of Israel. Is it possible that some of the giants you're facing right now are setting you up for future victories? Things to ponder and Bible bites to make you go, And with that, we will see you next time on Passing the Torch. So long.